Now, welcome to the third video in this course where I will explain to you which software we are going to use. Now, of course, I'm not going to show you Unity because, of course, we will be using Unity. This course assumes that you already know Unity and have made single-player games before. Now, you actually don't necessarily need to use Unity. This course is explaining how to create an online multiplayer game regardless of which front-end engine you use. You could use Unreal Engine, Godot, Phaser. You could even use React or Next.js as long as you have a front-end to display the data that is coming from the back-end. Remember, the game is not running on your front-end. We are simply using Unity as a front end to display things. It's kind of actually overkill, but most of you will have used Unity to create a single player game and already know Unity, and you would just love to use its particle system, its 3D physics, its maybe its visual script editor. You could use anything as long as it can show front end and send internet requests for API calls. Now, what we are looking at is Strapi. I will start with this. Strapi is an open source headless CMS. What is a CMS? Now, CMS is a content management system. If you are going to create anything like a blog or a website or a game, you know you are going to update it one day. You are going to add new content to it one day. There is only one constant in software, and that is change. Your project will change, and you want to update your content and add new content as fast as you can, as dynamic as you can, as real time as you can. Now, a content management system takes care of these things. It's basically going to be your admin panel. And in your admin panel, you can moderate all your users. You can manually change a user's experience or level, or if they're having a problem, their data is corrupted, you can quickly fix it. You want to ban a user, you have a list of all your characters, their IDs and their skills and their stats, their win rates. You can delete a character, you can add a new character, you can view everything an admin can view, the player's match history, or have an account for another team member of yours who's also an admin who has to inspect all this data. But Strapi is special. I think this is one of the best CMSs out there. The other CMSs are, actually WordPress can be used as CMS, but that's trash. Umbraco, we use that for .NET. We can also use Drupal, that's in PHP. But Strapi is more than that. Strapi provides you a great admin panel. Let's scroll through this, and as you can see, it's beautiful. It's very simplistic, very fast, very reliable and consistent. It works very good. But it doesn't only act as an admin panel. It also acts as it generates very easily API frameworks. It is an API framework. It generates APIs. So select the field for your content type. Here you can see, well, my content type is going to be, I'm going to have characters. A character can have a name, a level requirement. Is it a Boolean to, I don't know, indicate if it's a disabled character or not? Like you can disable it in real time from the game, maybe it's bugged. A description field, this character is an amazing mage from the region something something. You provide the structure and then you add these characters in your game and they will pop up in everyone's game, in everyone's client. Now let's go through this website more. As you can see at the bottom, it says try Strapi Cloud for 14 days. So they have their own DevOps cloud system where you can host your project, your Strapi project. Strapi is mostly used for creating blog websites, but we are going to use it for a game, and not many people use it for a game. We are not going to use cloud. We are going to, it's very expensive, first of all. We are just going to use our own server, which is much cheaper. Now here you can see everyone that is using Strapi. It's very up and coming. They are now at Strapi version 4. I have used 3 before, and 4 is much, much better. They are going to soon release Strapi version 5, which I assume is going to be even better. But It's not out yet, so we are going to be using Strapi v4. I'm not going to install the software right now. I'm going to go through them one by one, and we will, in the next videos, install them together. By the way, pricing, I think it's free. Why is it? Self-hosted. It's, of course, free forever, yes. Do not worry about the pricing. All the software you see here, this will be free. I tried to make this course as accessible as possible, so thankfully I managed to use tools that are just free, and do not worry about that. Now, Strapi is basically the front end of your back end. That's how I call it. You can very easily create data in Strapi, and it connects with your database. And it's basically, it acts as a view for your database and makes everything so much cheaper to manage your database. Now, in Strapi version 3, the older version, it supported non-relational databases like, I think, MongoDB, but we're not going to use it. We are going to need relational databases. And our relational database is PostgreSQL. The reason why I chose PostgreSQL is very simple. Community support, very robust, it's very strong, and it gets the job done. If you ever have an issue with PostgreSQL, you can just look up the internet, Google, and find people that will help you very easily. Now, PostgreSQL, it's a relational database. You do not need to know SQL for this course. Strapi under the hood has its own pre-made functions that help you write, they're functions to query your database, and those functions are converted to SQL. It's very nice if you know SQL, because if you use raw SQL, it's actually going to be the query much faster. If you have a lot of data to query, I would rather use raw SQL, but you can learn that later. We're going to be using PostgreSQL, and we are never going to directly touch PostgreSQL. Strapi takes care of that for us. Now, Strapi is not a server or something like that. Strapi runs on NodeJS. This is going to be our backend engine. It's basically NodeJS is JavaScript, but for the backend, for server. We are not going to code in JavaScript because, look, you come from a Unity C# background, and you know, developing a game, we cannot have this loose flexibility of JavaScript. In C#, we love to do object-oriented programming. We love to use the types. We love to be type safe. We love to know what is available to us if we use a variable that is of a certain type. So I remember the first time I wanted to make a game using Node.js as a backend server. By the way, why are we using Node.js? Simply because Strapi is built on Node.js. That's the only reason I chose this. Otherwise, we would have gone with Rust or .NET. You could still use Rust or .NET and then connect to Strapi, but let's use as few technologies as possible. Anyway, I remember the first time I wanted to code a game, and I was like, oh man, I want to use Strapi because it's just so good, but now I'm forced to use Node.js. Okay, fine, but how am I going to code in an object-oriented way in JavaScript? So I started Googling, and literally every Reddit comment said, oh, just use TypeScript. I'm like, what? What is TypeScript? Now, TypeScript, oh man, it's an amazing programming language. This saved me many, many times. If you know C# and you know JavaScript, even a little bit of JavaScript, you by default will know TypeScript. There are just a couple small differences, but it's just so good. TypeScript is literally equal to JavaScript, but with basically more features, with basically types. Now, the thing is, let's say in C# Unity, you declare a field, public string something something. So let's say a username. Username is a type string. You have the type safety. You cannot say, hey, my username is the number 5. In JavaScript, you can say that, and it will lead to very catastrophic errors, undefined errors. It will crash. TypeScript has types and will have the same behavior as C#. Now, TypeScript is a superset of JavaScript, so it's actually JavaScript with types. So you know how the file name extension of C# scripts is .cs. JavaScript is .js, TypeScript is .ts. But what you can do is literally develop in TypeScript in .ts, and if you change .ts to .js, it will still work because it's actually JavaScript, but with types. Now, there will be a settings file to set up the rules of TypeScript. You can tell it how strict it can be. And in TypeScript, you can, so as I said, in C# you have username that is of type string. In TypeScript, that will be the exact same thing. A username will be of type string, but it can also be of type any, A-N-Y, any, literally the word any for anything. You can give it the type any. What that means is, oh, hey, I'm going back to JavaScript, because in JavaScript, everything is of any type. So you can still default back to JavaScript if you wish to. If there is this complex logic in TypeScript and you just can't figure it out, you can temporarily set it to any, but don't do that because that defeats the purpose of TypeScript. Now, Yarn. All right, so NodeJS. The way I have to imagine Node.js, it's imagine how in C# and Unity, you open up a script, and at the top of your script, it says, import systems collections generic, which is lists and arrays. Import system IO for writing and reading files. Import link, import this, import that. You're basically importing libraries. Yarn is the, it literally says it here, is a package manager, library manager that doubles down as a project manager. Oh, I didn't even know this. Whether you work on simple projects, okay. So Yarn, you've probably heard of node modules or NPM. Yarn is basically the command line for downloading these libraries. And it will orchestrate these libraries. And you've probably heard of NPM. And NPM is the node package manager, I think. They are exactly the same thing, except Yarn is faster. So we are going to use Yarn. Yarn will allow us to download libraries and manage them. Nothing special. Well, it kind of is special, but that's all that Yarn does. Now, Socket.io. Now, we have to communicate with our front end to our back end in real time. We are going to be developing a 2D turn-based game. In order to connect and talk to the internet, you usually use HTTP requests, right? So get, post, fetch, put, and delete. These are simple HTTP requests. Usually that's what websites use, but you cannot make a real-time game with that. That would be an extremely large amount of HTTP requests that have to go back and forth. An HTTP request, by the way, a server cannot request from the client. You are supposed to do an HTTP request to the server and wait until you get a response back. You don't use that for gaming. I've seen people use HTTP requests for turn-based games, and the way it works is every 10 seconds, that HTTP request re-triggers to check what the state is of the battle in the server, and then you get a request back. That is not that real time. Now, I've heard of polling, where you do a request and then you wait a very long time, but if the connection breaks, you lose that connection. That is why we're going to use Socket.io instead. As it says, bidirectional and low latency communication for every platform. So sockets are bidirectional. You make this one pipeline between your front end and the back end, and you now have free flow of communication. It's as real time as it gets. Now, Socket.io specifically is for Node. So this is for the backend. Socket.io will be installed using Yarn on Node.js. Now, Socket.io also has to exist in Unity for it to connect with each other. We are going to use a third-party library, Socket.io Unity from It Is Najim. It's a very good GitHub repository. It works. It's a wrapper for Socket.io client C# to work with Unity. Amazing. Supports Socket.io server v2.3.4. We're going to be using 4. And has implemented HTTP polling and WebSocket. We're just going to use the WebSocket technology. One thing though, supported platforms is PC, Mac, iOS, Android. Well, we are going to be developing for PC. Now, you could actually also use Socket.io in WebGL. But this library apparently does not support that. Other platforms have not been tested or may not work. Well, it will not work because for WebGL, you will have to make specific JavaScript code in Unity for it to work, because it will have to trigger this WebSocket technology of your browser. And your browser does not have knowledge of your .NET runtime. You would have to externally trigger the JavaScript code for it to be able to use the WebSocket technology of your browser. So, of course, this does not have a WebGL. And that will be amazing, because WebGL, well, you can build your game for PC, Mac, iOS, Android, or PlayStation or Xbox, or maybe even your fridge. And WebGL is also one of those options. And WebGL is basically making able to play your game on the browser, which is very accessible. I really like how Unity is doing that. Sadly, I think it's going to be deprecated because lately WebGPU has been rising, and that is just more efficient than WebGL. But I just like the fact that WebGL exists. It makes your game more accessible. We're going to be using this, and I just wanted to make an honorable mention. Socket.io V4 Client Plus by Firesplash Entertainment. This, if you would like a more robust, more supported Socket.io solution for Unity, I would use this for your real projects. But we're not going to use this because, as I said, I wanted to make this course as accessible as possible. But Socket.io V4 Client Plus, this is very robust, has a lot of features, and you're probably not going to use all of them. I didn't even know a plus version existed. I remember that there's actually a couple. Socket.io. What will happen if I type this? Yeah, see? A funny story. I first started with V2 in my game, and then I updated to V3/V4, and it was not working. I was like, wait, why is it not working? How could it suddenly stop working? And the reason why I upgraded is because V3, V4 back then didn't exist in the Unity Asset Store. So I upgrade, and I ask for support from this author. He's a great guy. I think he has one of the best customer support I've ever seen. And we both were debugging my game. Turns out, in the back end, I forgot to also upgrade from V2 to V3 or 4. So you have to be careful about this. There will be two dependencies, one in the front end and one in the back end. I didn't know he had a plus version. He probably has, obviously has more features, I guess. Let's see, plus, there we go. Plus namespaces, binary payloads, acknowledgement. Ooh, identical protocol implementation of WebGL native mode. Oh, that's nice. Sample messages. Okay, well, these are things we're not going to use, so do not worry about that. We're going to teach you the basics of the dedicated client-server architecture. So we will be using this. We will, if I remember correctly, it tells you how to install. Copy this URL. You're going to be copying this. Open the package manager, click plus, and package from git URL, and you're done. And Bob's your uncle. I've always wanted to say that. Now, Docker. This is a pretty new thing. When I was developing, this wasn't much talked about, but wow, I must say, this has saved me a lot of time, and it really does work. It does what it says. The most used tool in Stack Overflow's 2023. Yeah, because this is a very genius thing. Now, what is this? Docker. Okay, so when you create a project, doesn't matter what type of software, what type of program, you first develop it on your machine. It can be Mac, it can be Windows, it can be Linux. And what do I mean with development? You're going to install VS Code. You're going to install NodeJS. You're going to install Postgres. You're going to install Unity. You're going to install a lot of software. And you develop this using VS Code, which is simply a fancy viewer for your scripts. And now you actually have to deploy your project or game. So you will deploy it on a server. Now, Strapi has amazing documentation on how to do that and how to make it work. But it's so long, it's so much. It's basically, you have to do so much setup. You have to reinstall everything I just showed you here to make it work. But what does Docker do is install it once and never again. We are going to develop portions of our game, basically the backend, but we are going to be running Node.js and PostgreSQL and Docker. And what Docker does is it containerizes your software, your project. So you define a set of commands. Hey, first install Node.js, and then install Postgres, and then connect this with each other, and then do this, that. All the commands you only write once, and then you hit a run command, and it boots up. So, like, imagine normally you locally develop your game, and you want to now share it with others. So you want to deploy it on a remote server, and other people can then play the game. But oh man, couldn't I just somehow make my computer connect to the internet, make it reachable from the internet? What if I just took my physical PC, went to DigitalOcean or any other provider, and just plug in some cables and make it work? That is actually what Docker is doing. Docker is giving you this container. You put everything inside of that container, and now when you deploy it, you don't move all your code to the server. You're moving the container to the server. Then you simply boot it up, and everything will run exactly as it was running on your computer. So this saves a lot of time, and it's amazing. I absolutely love it. Now that is Docker. Now, of course, we're going to have to use GitHub. We could have not used version control in our project because we don't need that, because this is just educational. But in order to update your game, you're also going to have to move your project repo to the server. So GitHub is fine. Like, okay, let me explain it like this. You're going to git clone your final game into the server of DigitalOcean that you rented. And then if you ever commit a new update, you're going to git pull in that server and restart it, and the game restarts with your new changes. Now, this is pretty old school. This is where cloud services come in, like Amazon Web Services and Microsoft Azure. I personally don't have much experience with that. I don't have CI/CD experience. What that means is building these pipelines where it first goes through stages and checks and tests your code before it actually deploys. You could do that. That's kind of overkill for a small thing like this, but I suggest you to learn that eventually. We're going to be old school. We're hosting our stuff on GitHub. Then we will pull it into our DigitalOcean server and then hit the Docker run command, and it boots up our server. Sorry, it boots up our game, not our server. Now, that basically is it. DigitalOcean, as I said in the previous videos, it's do not worry about the costs. It has a pricing. It's actually pretty expensive, but I found a way. It's basically a Strapi coupon code, if I remember correctly, that gives you 2 months for free. After those 2 months, just kill it. Just remove the server, or just create a new email. You could sign up with your email +1 at gmail.com or email +2 at gmail.com and generate infinite emails. I'm not sure if you can actually do that, but that's an idea. Try it out. But just for educational purposes, we're going to be using the 2 months for free. Now, yeah, I didn't show Unity because I already assume you have experience in Unity. One thing I forgot to show you is Visual Studio Code. The chances are, now, VS Code is a relatively new thing, and it's taking the industry by storm. It's basically Visual Studio, but more lightweight, and it works. It's very serene, it's very easy to use, it's very customizable, though in the end, Visual Studio actually has more built-in features for debugging, which is pretty nice, but I would only be concerned with that if you're going to make a very large-scale application. VS Code is amazing, very lightweight. It's also from Microsoft, Visual Studio Code. And wow, Microsoft really does make some good software. Microsoft made VS Code. Microsoft made Typescript. That's, I just realized, Microsoft Azure, I use that too. I use a lot of Microsoft things. Anyway, we're going to be using VS Code. I will, in the next video, we will install everything. As I said, as you can see in this bar, I already have a lot of things open. So I've actually already have installed a lot. but I don't want to teach you that way. As I said, I want to start from a clean blank slate and install things and then get into problems, errors, and fix them together. For example, I already know we're going to get a lot of trouble running Docker on Windows because, let me check, Mac, Intel chip, Apple chip, Linux. In order to run Docker, you're going to have to edit some Windows settings, the hypervisor, to allow virtualization, and that's going to require a restart. So I'll try to do Docker in the end. So be prepared. You're going to have to restart your computer at some point. And if I remember correctly, there was also another issue. So Unity C#, I don't know why and how, it sometimes refuses to work with Visual Studio Code. It's a simple IDE. It's a simple code editor, but it has some problems. So we're going to run into some problems, and I will tell you all possible ways to fix it. I don't even remember what fixes it because it randomly starts working, but we will figure it out together. And as I said, please talk to me. Please send me a message. I will help you with everything. I will respond and read everything. Now, one last thing. Do not install PostgreSQL on your machine right now. As I said, we're going to install everything in the next video, but Postgres is not supposed to be installed on your machine because it will conflict with Docker, because we're going to run Postgres inside of Docker, and we're going to expose the 5432 port of PostgreSQL, and it might give some conflicts. We are also going to, well, it's up to you. We're going to use pgadmin or dbeaver to view our database and see if everything is okay. But we're just going to use that once. If you don't have Postgres on your system, that's fine. That's perfect. But if you do, I will also show you how to disable Postgres. So I am going to download Postgres and install it to show you how to disable it too. And I think that should cover everything. Now, that's it for this video, and I will see you in the next video.